Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Scout Selections here with StatSalt.com. It's currently Sunday, May 5th. I know this video is coming out later than usually does, and I might have missed some of the early baseball games, but it's fine because the play that I will be having for play of the day is one of the later games, which should be taking place at roughly 7 o'clock Eastern Time. So with that being said, we'll quickly recap what happened yesterday, even though we did not have a play of the day. Still a very eventful day in sports with the hockey playoffs as well as basketball, not to mention the Kentucky Derby, which was one of the most controversial finishes in the history of the Kentucky Derby. But that's a separate story. If you are following me on Twitter, you know that besides the actual winner being overturned, I was in a separate bet where I was waiting for results, and I ended up losing by roughly, I'd say, a nose, maybe a little bit less, in a matchup between Improbable and I forgot the name of it. It's like Tacitus, I believe, is the name of the horse. So everyone was going nuts over the first place, and I was worried more about who got fourth because they were going side by side, and I thought that Improbable ended up winning that, but he ended up losing. Those were the only play I had. I had a small exacta box, but overall, I think everybody's bets were pretty much destroyed once the maximum security winner was overturned, and you ended up having a 65-1 shot win the entire thing. And a $1 superfecta in that Kentucky Derby paid out roughly $144,000. So I know that horse racing doesn't appeal to a lot of people, but if you end up getting one of these lucky winners every now and then, $1 to win $144,000 definitely sounds like a pretty good day to me, especially on a Saturday weekend. But other than that, we'll quickly move on to the play of the day. I know that in the past I said that I wasn't going to be betting on NBA anymore, but overall, I'm not really a big fan of the card. In other sports, and I think that there is value on one basketball play, so I will be lifting the self-imposed ban on NBA because I think that there is definitely value on this given play. And the play we are going to be looking at will be between the Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trailblazers, and we will be leaning to the first half under 107.5, which is available at minus 110, pretty much market wide, but we will be using Bookmaker for this line. And the logic is very simple. A lot of money has come in on the under so far in the full game and the first half. Main reason is because of fatigue and how both these teams played a legendary matchup in Game 3, in which the game ended up going to 4 overtimes. In that game, Nikola Jokic played 65 minutes, which is exhausting just thinking about it, and 11 players on both teams combined played at least 36 minutes, not to mention the fact that the first half under has won each of the last 2 games. I know that the 140 to 137 is going to inflate, the over and under statistics, but overall, it's been a pretty defensive series. If you think about it, there was 277 points scored in the 4 overtime game, but if you factor in what actually happened in regulation, both teams combined for 73 points in overtime. So take the final score of 177 and subtract a solid 73, and you got roughly 204 at the end of regulation, which was significantly under the total. So that's another thing where you also have to dive in where final stats and final trends don't always allude to, because that counts as an over for both teams, but realistically, that game was a dead under before it ended up going to overtime. And if you ended up having money on the under there, sorry for your loss. But overall, the main reason here, the first halves have been relatively low scoring in the series besides Game 1. I know the full game itself, you can't argue, due to fatigue, they'll be even more tired in the second half. And I understand that, but I think that these teams are actually extremely even. I know that Denver originally I thought would kind of run away with the series, and Portland ended up proving me wrong in Game 2. Game 3, I thought Portland would win because of the fact that it was the first game in Portland. But overall, I think that there's definitely an overtime draw in this game between these teams because they seem pretty much dead even. So I'm a little bit skeptical taking the full game under because I think this game will be really close at the end of regulation. And I think that there will be a lot of free throws and scramble points potentially at the end of the game. So I will be looking at the first half at 107.5. I think this total is just simply way too high. I don't really understand why it's at 210.5, especially since the last game totaled 204 and they're going in regulation and both teams are going to be exhausted. I know that both teams, it was reported by ESPN, actually skipped practice. I believe it was yesterday to give both their players a day off because they're going to need it. So it wouldn't surprise me to see both teams come out relatively flat. And I think that the lack of practice could potentially lead to a little bit of sloppiness early on. I definitely think that both teams this is definitely a grind fest, and it looks like the series will be going to 7 games. But in terms of the actual game itself, yeah, it's fine if you like the total over 210.5. I personally would lean to the under based on fatigue, but I do think it will be a very close game. I think there will be an overtime draw, but I definitely think both teams will start out relatively sluggish in the first half, as we have seen so far this series. The last game, for example, even though you had 277 points, you ended up having 40 points in the first quarter, and you had 55 in the second. So you ended up having a solid 95 points in the first half. And the game before that, you were also in the 90s there. I simply just think that I agree that both teams will be ready to play, but I think that first half-wise, I still think they're going to be tired. And I think the lack of practice yesterday could lead to some slight issues early on before they finally get going again. But I will be leaning to the first half under 107.5 based on how the previous game flows have gone. It seems like both teams kind of do a feeling out process in the first quarter. They pick it up a little bit in the second, but by that time, the first quarter is so low scoring that the game will go under. So I would also consider looking at the first quarter under in that game as well. But the play that I think possesses a lot of value in the NBA will be the first half under 107.5 in the Nuggets and Trailblazers game, which is available at -110 market wide, but we will be using Bookmaker for this bet. But we'll do what we always do. We think that see, the thing is, Portland usually pushes the pace, but Denver, even though Denver has liked to push the pace, it seems like this series, in the first half in particular, it seems like the pace is relatively slowed down, and this series has been a lot more defensive based than I thought it would be. It seems like both teams offensively have kind of started grinding it out against each other. Jokic, I would also lean to that, but at the same point, you have to wonder how fatigue's going to set in after 65 minutes. I know he had a day off yesterday. Jokic is great, and he was unstoppable in the last game against the Trailblazers. But I have to also assume both coaches will take the extra time without practice, try to come up with a better game plan to potentially slow down Jokic, etc. But Blazers' first quarter, I think that makes sense. I definitely think it was a very demoralizing loss for Denver. Because Denver, since they already lost home court, is going to need to win a game on the road in order to potentially win the series. And losing in 4 overtimes in a road game is absolutely heartbreaking for them. Do I think it's over for the Nuggets? No. I think the Nuggets are still the more talented team, and I think that they could come out and potentially get a win tonight. Blazers' first quarter, I definitely think that they're going to be pumped up for this game. But Denver also knows that they were millimeters away from actually winning the last game, and now they just need to dig a little bit deeper if that's possible, just to potentially win this game. I think Denver could be a live dog here. I think that Denver has shown that they have the ability to compete with Portland in Portland. And Portland overall, they have looked good at home. They have struggled at times. I think Denver money line and Denver +3 makes sense there. I think these teams are pretty even with Portland at home. But Jokic is always the best. In my opinion, I think he's the best player on the court all around. I know Lillard's the best scorer on the court, but Jokic is arguably the best rebounder on the court, the best passer on the court, and the best post player on the court. So I think that that's definitely a factor. I know that Enes Kanter cannot guard him to save his life. So I would personally lean to Denver and Denver money line and Denver +3, but I will be leaning to the first half under because I think that both teams will come out relatively sluggish after not having practice yesterday and after playing 4 overtimes. So I would expect to see some of their shots start out a little bit flat before they finally pick it up in the second quarter. But I will move on to the leans that I always give out. And we will be starting with the other NBA game, which is the game that I thought about giving out as a play of the day, but decided not to. You have the Philadelphia 76ers and the Toronto Raptors, which takes place it's about now. So I'll give out a brief preview because the games will be starting now. For me, I'd lean to the over 216 in this. I know Pascal Siakam is currently a game time decision. Nobody really knows if he's going to be playing. But Siakam's been great offensively, but he's a very underrated defender. And after Philadelphia pushed the pace and pretty much dominated the game, I have to assume that with Siakam out, I think Philadelphia is going to dominate on the wings, and I think they're going to push the pace even faster. So I will actually lean to Siakam will be starting, and Embiid will be starting. But Siakam, even though he is playing, you have to wonder what percentage of health he actually has. Or just because somebody's playing doesn't mean that they're going to be anywhere near 100%. The fact that Siakam was doubtful going into today, I know that he's probably taken a couple of cortisone shots to try to help deal with the pain. But if in terms of percentage, I'd have to assume that Siakam's probably around 60% healthy, maybe even less. I know it's definitely going to struggle out there, at least for a little while. Embiid is unstoppable. He had 30-something and 13. He had another double-double. Embiid's great. In terms of this game, I know that a lot of money has come in on Philly. as Philly went from a 1-point underdog to a 2-point favorite, or even 2.5 in some spots like Bovada. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that Siakam will not be playing, or they thought that Siakam would not play. So now that Siakam is playing, I think that the market's kind of over-adjusted, and I think that the people that bet on Philly that much assume that Siakam would be out of the lineup, which is not true. Plus, Ibaka, I was never a big fan of Ibaka in Oklahoma City because he used to be a great rim protector, and he used to never shoot. But now he actually started shooting threes, and I personally hated it when he first started doing it. But he's actually been pretty good at it, and I think he's actually provided a nice spark for the Raptors in the playoffs. So Ibaka getting more minutes doesn't bother me at all, especially considering the fact that Embiid is almost unstoppable in the low block. You need to get as many potential rebounds as you can, and I think Ibaka will help Toronto clean up the boards in that game. I think Philly will win. I know originally I said that Toronto would win Game 4, but that was before Siakam's health became a concern. I would lean to Philly, but knowing Philly itself, I still don't trust this team. And I know that Philly has looked great at times, but they've lacked consistency. And Toronto, after getting embarrassed in Philly in Game 3, I wouldn't be surprised to see Toronto come out with a more focused effort. And I think that Toronto will be able to handle the atmosphere a little bit better in Game 4. And I think Philly will win the game because Siakam's on 100%. But I think that Toronto will keep this game within single digits throughout the entirety of the game. And I think it will be a one-possession game late. So I will lean to the Sixers, but I would not be surprised to see Toronto keep this game closer than people anticipate. And that's just something that I personally think. Yeah, Ibaka, Pascal together, they've done really well. Gasol has been great defensively against Embiid, but he's also a little bit slow. So you kind of have to wonder how well he's going to handle Embiid as the series goes on and as Embiid gets healthier. So that's something to keep in mind moving forward. But other than that, I will also look at the NHL games. I don't think any game is going to be as entertaining as the two games last night, or the two games yesterday, I should say, with the Bruins and with the Bruins and the Sharks yesterday. The game actually already started, but it's actually a shame because I actually wrote an article about the game on Statsalt.com, and I actually said that I thought St. Louis would be able to get the job done. St. Louis is up 1-0 right now, about 10 minutes in. Overall, this series, I still think it's going 7, so I think St. Louis is going to win this game. For Game 7, I'd lean to Dallas. But that game already started, so there's no point in giving out a preview now. But if you could live bet it, potentially look at the live bet under, especially if there's potentially 2 goals in the first period, because I still think that this will be a relatively low-scoring game. I think St. Louis could get up early. They could park the bus, or so to speak, and they'll play more conservatively. So I will lean to the live bet under there. Other than that, I'll go into one more baseball game that I will talk about, and we will be looking at the night game in particular because that game is going to be starting at roughly 7 o'clock Eastern time with the Cardinals and the Cubs. And money's come in on the Cardinals. Cubs opened up at -140. They're down to roughly -125 market wide. A lot of money coming in on the Cardinals, mostly because of Quintana's history against the Cardinals. His numbers against the Cardinals are not very good, and Cardinals batters on the roster are batting about .339 against Quintana in his career, and the Cubs batters against Wainwright are batting roughly .210. So I can understand why Wainwright is, getting some money here. Do I agree with the move? Not really. I still know that the Cubs are the hottest team in baseball, and for a team that started out in such a terrible – they were just awful for the first 2-3 weeks, and now the team is 18-12. If you actually look through how the Cubs have been playing, they've won 6 straight, and they're actually going for a sweep tonight. So for me, I actually think that the Cubs will get the job done. In terms of the total's at 10 because the wind is blowing out at Wrigley, and everybody already knows that means more home runs. Wainwright has been great in his last couple of starts, but if you've actually watched him, his stuff is not great. So I would not be surprised to see Wainwright give up a couple of bombs, maybe to Rizzo or Baez. I know the Cubs are rolling. Quintana's also in danger of, giving up some long balls, so I do lean to the over there. But the Cardinals have been awful against lefties. How's it going, Terry? Thanks for joining us. Yeah, the Cardinals have been terrible against lefties so far this season. I know that we ended up losing a play today on the under with that same philosophy with the Cardinals and Nationals in the first 5 a couple of days ago. But that doesn't change the fact that as a whole, the Cardinals have one of the lowest batting averages against lefties in the entire league. And money continues to pour in on St. Louis as the Cubs, as I record this video, have actually dropped from 125 to 120 at Pinnacle. I'm not getting in the Cubs' way. Cubs have won 6 straight. This team's cooking. and I think that the Cubs will be able to complete the sweep. So I will be leaning to the Cubs and the over in that one. And that's my thoughts. But the play of the day, as I said before, will be on the Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trailblazers first half under 107.5, which is available at minus 110 at Bookmaker. Other than that, if you are still looking for other plays, even though the play of the days have not been going well this past week, some of you might realize that the tennis plays that I've been giving out that I have not counted towards my personal record have actually all won. We are currently 3-0 on the tennis plays, and I'll be giving out another one on Twitter. And there's the Twitter handle right there if you want some little extra action on tennis. A lot of matches tomorrow, some stuff I find value on. I might put out a couple of plays. But overall, the main reason why it's going to be on Twitter is because I haven't exactly had time to go over the matches in particular with the lines. So I will be uploading that as a post on my Twitter later today if you want some extra plays. But that's going to do it for this installment of Scott Selections here on Sunday, May 5th. And good luck to all of you and your respective bets.